Hello everyone, I'm Alexandra August.
I'm Johnny Kolosinski.
And welcome to the DiscoTrek, a Star Trek Discovery podcast. We have a very special guest host this week, Larry Nemecek of the Trek Files podcast, Trekland Tuesdays Live, which is a phenomenal YouTube stream, weekly YouTube stream, and he is the founder and CEO of Portal 47 and all things Treklands. Hi, Larry. Thanks for coming.
Well, thanks, guys, for having me on. This is a little bit different mix of folks, and I always like that. And it's a hot take on Discovery, which is fun.
Yeah, we do it right after, and it definitely makes for some emotional conversations.
Yeah, occasionally some heated ones.
Yeah. I've hit Johnny before. There's a reason we're Skyping and not in person.
Yeah.
This week we're going to be discussing.
Oh, actually, really quickly.
Really quickly, of course.
Larry, can you tell us a little? You have a lot of Star Trek endeavors, and you're pretty prominent within the fandom. And I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit more detail into the couple of manifestations of Larry.
Oh,
I don't know. That was a weird way to phrase it. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, that's funny. I won't send my magnetized nanobots after you or anything. I'm still reeling from that image.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I've added to the pile of things. I mean, a lot of old timers will remember the Next Generation Companion and the years I edited the Communicator magazine, the official magazine, and I've done my.
I remember Communicator.
Yeah.
I had the Next Generation Companion, and it was probably that and my Dungeons and Dragons books were the two things I reread the most often.
Well, good, and wore it out, and.
Oh yeah, like literally broke the spine. On the red one.
Tree Media was still a thing. Yeah. But so, I mean, over the years that the Stellar Cartography map book set just came out a couple of years ago. We revised it, and looking at all this info about Boreth tonight, they went back to the charts we used again. It's kind of cool to see that again.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, John Van Sitters and CBS made sure that when they first staffed up, there was one kind of glitchy thing in the pilot. Well, there were a lot of glitchy things in the pilot. But right after they got the first couple of, go-rounds done, they made sure they got a lot of the material that had been out there that they could just take and run with and make their own. And one of those was the Stellar Cartography maps and the guidebook there. So the whole thing with the Klingon War and all those border maps and even things you saw tonight.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
so they didn't make. Okay, that's interesting because I don't know. I just had I had the Okuda's encyclopedia, and then I had Mark Altman's like Captain's Logs, but I would have loved a Stellar Cartography book because I didn't have anything that was particularly visual.
Oh yeah. Well, we should work on that. No, it came out in 2013, and it's standing on the shoulders of those before. I mean, Mike did the first. For the price on Next Generation, he came up with the quadrant system and where everybody basically was. And then over time that got filled in and they put the Borg in the Delta Quadrant and, the Romulans and Klingons in the Beta and Cardassians in the Alpha and then the Gamma made. And then when everything was going together, Voyager was in the Delta and the wormhole on DS9 went to the Gamma and all of that just kind of flowered and flourished.
It was
by Enterprise's time, Jeff Mandel, who had been around for a long time. This is a long history, but I'm really going to get it for you. There was a book came out in 2002 that Jeff Mandel, who was on the art staff then, basically fleshed out everything, took the best of what had been on the show and the best of fan versions, trying to tie it together, including some old stuff I had done, and came out with a book, which was awesome, except it had fold-outs and people were wanting to have bigger it needed updating and it needed to have bigger formats, and people online were scanning and mashing things up so they'd have everything in one piece. So 2013, then we did this 10 map set with a guidebook, and it wasn't just maps. It was like different cultures and different points in time.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. And then we just updated it for the end, the things in between, things that didn't make the 2013 book and now Discovery. So, and that's what they used on Discovery.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, especially because it was really important to me and really helped me understand just the makeup of the Star Trek galaxy, essentially, knowing that it was just cut into quadrants. That played such a big part in my ability to visualize the space and to visualize territories when you're like watching a show like DS9 and they're talking about territories and they're talking about war. It was so incredibly useful to have that kind of visualization, obviously, and the fact that it's evolved and everybody's sort of put a piece into it and it's become this thing that's used on Disco is really special.
Well, I mean, yeah, DS9, I mean, nothing else. A lot of this was updating or building on what's come before, but there's a couple of things I'm really proud of in my time with the Keys. And one of those is I finally made sense. And both the writers, I mean, Ira and Ron and all of them, made no bones about they had no idea about space and territory and all that. And then even Mike and Doug on the show, they would do those really pretty star chart, they'd be standing in front of something and Cisco and Ross are pointing at something and exclamating. But it was like nonsense. They didn't have any idea. I mean, they had a basic idea of they had envisioned where Bajor and Cardassia were in relation to each other. But as far as where all these battles and things were happening, it was like nothing. It was like no. And
it was away from here.
Some things, when you go back and you go through the story points, are not the Battle of Tyra 4 that happened over the season break that they all ran off to fight at first, and they all came back like with, 1/10 of the ships they started with, and it was a huge opening disaster. That was never like they never detailed it or where it was or what the stakes were, just that they ran off and came back beat real bad. So that was kind of the pinpoint. But I basically choreographed the Dominion War.
Oh,
and
cool.
made it make sense, and I think works within. So all those references to, they've taken over Benzar and they've occupied Beta Z, and
you had an actual map in your head, like a war map, like a
and if we can break through here, we can. They kept talking about how the home worlds, Earth and Vulcan are threatened. It's like, well, then why is everything back on if they're so threatened, and why are they doing so well? And they still, I made it make sense where all those things can be true and still make sense physically. So I'm very proud of that. At the time, when everybody at the time threw up their hands and said, "We're just writing a show. We're not writing."
you calmed me down a little bit. I like that's organization to such a degree that it makes me really happy.
I'm glad I could make your show, Alan.
Oh no, it was perfect. But speaking of Discovery, we are. Actually, we did bring Larry on to talk about the show.
So I'm mentioning Portal 47 real fast before we move on.
Oh,
okay?
yeah,
sure.
Please do.
Yeah, please
I did my duty. Okay, I didn't mean to get off on the maps. I could have ate up all
I got really excited. I own Game of Thrones maps, so it wasn't
You
just
lured me into that, though. The record will show you lured me.
So Portal 47.
Oh, I thought I'm just going to move on.
Okay.
Oh no! I want to hear about that too.
No, so Portal 47 is the thing that's the most out of the box. It was my pain of wondering where the digital era, where Star Trek was taking us in the fallow times. Now the last couple of years, things have settled down. Well, they may have settled down with Discovery, but the fact that we're on this cusp of a whole new golden era, assuming everything gets made well. But we've got all these titles rolling out in this new paradigm of the streaming, and everybody's getting used to that now. But, for 10, 12 years, what I called the fallow years, there was nothing going on, and there was so much Star Trek out there just beyond, just magazine articles and even conventions, and the actors are out and all that. And I had been on the front lines all the time, all the years after we moved to L.A., working on the Companion, doing the magazine, doing fact files, working on, all these events and things, everything from the experience in Vegas to a lot of the touring shows, and just not so much even the actors, but a lot of the behind the scenes people that I interviewed for the books and kept that up and archived their interviews. And I have those. And I just wanted to do something that would take advantage of the new age and I say it's for all the Star Trek fans who have no idea how much Star Trek they have no idea about. And there's been a great number of even more books and podcasts are doing a great job of filling the gaps. But even then, it's just
there's a lot of podcasts, and it's really tough to browse them and know, the Disco ones are obvious, but there's plenty of others that are very, very, we're doing these episodes of Voyager on a rewatch every week in March kind of specificity. And it's tough to know what they are from their titles and sift through them, and it can just get kind of exhausting finding the one that's right for you.
Yeah. And even beyond that, a meta to all this is, a few years ago, I forgot my slides at a convention, and I had 2 slots to fill, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? And I realized in the moment that there were a lot of dots to connect with, not just Star Trek itself and its history, but also like the industry and like why the JJ movies then were different than, I mean, people were not understanding, or they were upset or angry or just befuddled about, you know, like, why don't we have a TV series back, and what's, you know, and so rather than do a toxic YouTube video series, silly me, I just started trying to connect all these dots for people, and I realized there's a big gap in that. So between just the fun of Star Trek backgrounding and all the Trek I knew people didn't have, and all the, basically somebody said, when I didn't know what was happening next and Trek was up in the air and I was debating what to do next with my life, and I had a couple friends say, Larry, all the things you have, all the things you have seen after, you know, like 20 years on the front line there, and all the people you know, and not just, oh, I had dinner with Patrick Stewart, which I don't, but I mean, that kind of a thing. The Rolodex of people who most people don't have a clue about the stories they can offer and the insight they can do. They're saying, you know, all that stuff, why don't you do something with all of that? So Portal 47, to get back to this finally, is what I'm doing with all of that in Surf Fandom as a business, but I'm filling a niche that I don't think exists in any fandom, much less Star Trek. So it's a monthly package. The highlight, there's discounts, there's early bird looks, there's pieces out of my archives, but the best thing, and something I couldn't have done 10 years ago, was use the internet, I use free conference call, and we have 2 roundtables a month. I have one for Europe and one for the States, prime time, and then we have a guest every month. And it's usually someone that you're never going to see at a convention. Maybe they've had one interview in their life, and we have them on live. People submit questions. The guests bring their personal pictures, and we have like combination slideshow and usually webcam interview, me and it. It's more of a chat than an interview. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's somebody that I've known and maybe known for years. So it's really laid back. That's the
it sounds like incredibly like.
And then we have recordings, and if you're not there live, you get the recording later. And it's a nice little, for $31 a month. I think it's a real good, you know, for a little more than 2 movie tickets now, or about the same anymore. I think it's I say it's like a mini con all year long, and no matter where you are. So we've got, you know, all around the world. We've got people out in the middle of nowhere who never get to conventions. And the community is really, what I didn't think about was what a great group it was. But
yeah, it sounds like you've created a network almost. It's really, and Trek fans are so interested in sucking the marrow out of everything. Like I'm not surprised. Like I feel like you're filling it. I'm surprised nobody's done this, but nobody's done this yet.
If you're listening to this, you're probably the key audience. So we'll have a link to Portal 47 in the show notes, so you can learn a bit more.
Good deal. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah. No, I'm excited about it. I have my documentary I'm working on that we're really working on now too, and I have new things seem to come up all the time. But the core thing I'm really excited about day to day and trying to build on is the portal. So again, it's things that people don't even know that they could know about. You were talking about sucking the marrow,
like improvised generation, things like that.
Oh yeah, well that's not my thing, but I love to promote it where I can.
Larry and I I think met in person at a live show called Improvised Generation, which is an improv show that is just what it sounds like. Not students, but people at this improv community, Impro in Los Angeles, rehearse for weeks and weeks in a particular type of genre-based improv, so that you can come and see a show and they can produce a 1-hour episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation that's entirely improvised, and it's really funny. Yeah,
the school has many genres. You can go see a Jane Austen, you can see a Game of Thrones-ish, you can see a silent movie, you could see a film noir. I mean, they have all these genres, Shakespeare or, you know, Chekhov. But
you can do. Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, they have running characters, but every show is original, and it's, you know, the audience gives them a word. And they do it, but they have sound effects and music cues, and
they also have guest stars too. Mary Chieffo actually guest starred on a show, so if you're in the LA area, I highly recommend you check it out.
Coming up, so if you're in the LA area, it's April 14th. It's Mary's night. Yes, still coming.
So those of you who are not local to LA, you tuned in to hear us talk about Star Trek Discovery.
So this week we're discussing episode 12 of season 2, Through the Valley of Shadows.
And we had pretty distinct storylines this episode, which kind of makes it on the recap. Spock and Burnham jet off to gain some recon into a Section 31 shuttle that checked in late. Pike, meanwhile, since they can't take the Discovery because the data that Control wants is aboard, they leave Discovery at Borath, or they take Discovery to Borath so Pike can grab a time crystal. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, L'Rell and Voq reunite because it just so happens that their son is there and all grown up. And then C plot would be Jet Reno adorably attempts to guide Culber and Stamets back together with questionable results. So, what's it like? How did everyone feel about this as a whole?
Overall, plot-wise, I liked it quite a bit. I liked going back to Borath. It's one of those deep dives from canon that I enjoy seeing more of. We talked about before that Borath is the planet that the clone of Kahless ends up showing up on, 120 years later or something like that,
yeah.
Larry?
Yeah.
And I like seeing more of that fleshed out, and but honestly, I felt especially the Spock Burnham shuttlecraft scene, it felt really clunky to me, dialogue wise. I'm talking about my feelings, and this is how I feel.
Yeah. It definitely felt like a heavy Discovery episode. Plus, I don't know, they keep also flashing back to stuff we've seen not 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Like when Tyler is telling Burnham about this baby, he flashes back to the episode we saw where like they basically just sort of wordlessly recap that Klingon episode. Like we remember it's the last time we saw them, and it was a very major plot development because L'Rell had a baby in the same episode she gave it away. It's like I don't need those looks backs, and I feel like it shows really. It's just kind of that perennial tell and not show kind of thing that we're getting.
Yeah. In the Klingon show, I was fine with it because I was thinking it was very Shakespearean, very very Grecian, very Titus Andronicus. But there was a big outcry in fandom about the severed heads of the baby.
I was so into that.
Yeah,
it's no like they're like this is a post Ned Stark Red Wedding world. So if we're gonna have Klingons and bring Klingons into like the modern conversation, they're not gonna use pain sticks. They're gonna kill people.
Yeah. They're going to eat captains and decapitate babies.
Yeah, and the Klingons, like, were always supposed to be Shakespearean. They were always supposed to be completely over the top, but they got really benign in, recent Trek because they had to be. Like, we made friends with them, but this is not that time.
Yeah, don't knock a paint stick. I mean, you could still ram a paint stick through a baby's ear, I mean, let's not water it down too much.
How are these that small are these paint sticks? I remember them being very...
There's the junior size. They're your training pain stick.
I literally was saying somewhere else a week or two ago, just kind of out of the blue, at the moment when the conversation was lagging, hey, are like, and it'd been 3 or 4 episodes since the L'Rell, goodbye and the baby head show, and he was sent off to Borath. And I thought, are we done with the Klingons this season? Are we not going to get back to the mother of Kronos and that plot line and the initial reaction from a lot of people that I was in conversation with or wherever was kind of like, oh my God, haven't we had enough Klingons? It was almost like hostile. Haven't we had enough Klingons for that first year to, can we let it rest? And I'm like, I'm like, sorry. That was
I feel like I'm of that group.
And here they are.
I don't know. I feel like I'm of that group who was just because I just feel like that Simpsons episode, like again with the Klingons, this is such a Klingon heavy franchise, and then to also make them a major, along with the Vulcans, and then to make the Klingons a major part of the first season, it was just like, not only are this is a new Star Trek, but it's not exploring anything new. But at the other hand of that is, it's been weird that L'Rell hasn't been around much this season because she's treated as such a major character. And it's like, well, you already planted that seed. You can't just pretend like she's not growing somewhere. She's hugely popular, and she's a really cool, interesting character. So I'm kind of of both minds about that.
Well, I mean, at the time it was fresh from that episode, but that was like a third of the way in the season, and now we're at the end, and yeah, I think it's fine. And it wasn't even a heavy dose tonight. She was really there to get them to Borath, and then let's have another vote Tyler baby resolution.
Let's resolve this problem. Let's resolve this storyline so we'll never have to come back to it.
If you love someone, set them free.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like Lorella's
fighting, when you get to a certain point, you just break out into Klingon and make Pike stand there and listen to you yell at each other.
My issue with this is like their relationship is really interesting and unique if you think about it. Like I don't even know that you have to think about it, but it really reminds me of the sort of warped relationships that happen when you watch a soap for more than a few years. Mm-hmm. Because if you do, you're going to see like a couple, a legitimate couple who's a super couple, have in the span of 3-4 years broken up, gotten back together. Both or one of them has died and come back to life. One of them has gotten a new personality. One of them has been addicted to drugs, and this is like within 18 months. Right. And you get to the point where you're watching the show and you're suspending your disbelief that any of the people on the show would still be in any kind of relationship.
Would be functioning adults.
Exactly. And like and to me, Tyler and Lorella, it's like, okay, so one extremist and another extremist with a handy background in spycraft meet, fall in love. She turns the other guy into someone else completely. That goes wrong. And then she and the other guy are stuck together after the other guy's fallen in love for a human who's this woman's sworn enemy. And then they're living together on Kronos, and they have a kid, and it was just like, where did this go? Like, how did this get here?
And Vogue Tyler starts off at the beginning running off with her to stuff down the Klingon Empire, and then within the space of one episode, he's okay. Well, I'm going to give up on that.
This is probably not a good idea.
This discovery. Oh, now I'm going to bop off to Section 31. I mean, it's like where will Ash's land next?
I feel like Ash Tyler is like one of those. He could also have said, like, I could shoot a guy on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen to me, because that's literally what happened.
He's the quintessential millennial tech bro, and he just changes jobs every year because that's the best way to get a promotion.
I would totally vote for him for president.
I would totally invest in his startup. 100% invest in Ash Tyler's startup.
Sit around and watch the length of his hair change from week to week. So
yeah,
the beard.
But in all seriousness, I think there was just I find the relationship between Laurel and Tyler is so well played between Shazad Latif and Mary Chieffo. It's so real. It's so grounded in something. But we didn't see the relationship itself progress much. We just saw her be his abuser, and then like he kind of has to accept her, and they spent some time alone for the space of maybe 25 minutes out of the entire time they've both been on the show. And yet they have this really compelling, interesting relationship. We haven't really sat with that ever, because it's so weird, but that makes me want to know more about it. I wanted to see them like eat lunch or like work, like govern together a little bit. Like today, I feel like we first saw them actually, because like for a while they were functioning at least couple in terms of coworkers for a while on Kronos.
They really look like a fairly well-adjusted divorce couple who still care a lot about their kid.
They would have done a great job of co-parenting.
Right.
We were talking before the podcast was up, and we were kind of riffing, and I was like, oh, Lorella's like, she's like over this breakup. Mm-hmm. She is she's fine. She's like, Johnny was like, she's gotten a dog. I was like, she's got a fabulous new look, totally new style makeover. Hair looks great.
She's allowed hair. Yeah.
And it's working for her. She totally got queer-eyed, and it's just chef's kiss.
I would have been really happy seeing a Laurel miniseries, like a 6-part Klingon governing the new Kronos miniseries. I think that could have been a phenomenal riff on what they put together.
Well,
I agree.
Everybody's focused on, Pike and Spock and all this, but what's floating in the back of my mind through all of this, especially the way they ended the first season the way they did and sent her back and propped her up as or mother, which is so funny to me because after Picard basically got sucked in to be the Chadish, not the Chadish, the Arbiter of Succession.
The Arbiter of Succession.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So he's there. Kirk and McCoy are there with in Star Trek VI helping to they're around when there's a change. It's like the Klingons never have any new government, new leader come in without some Federation person having their
That's
hands
a good
over.
point.
Even
I mean, Worf is Klingon, but he's still a Starfleet officer when he kills Gowron.
Yeah.
To get the damn war settled and gone on with, and put Martok in. So it's
even
really
in
amazing.
Enterprise, there was the episode with J.G. Hertzler, where he redefines Klingon law with Archer.
Well, and then they find and how about finding the Klingon, the clone of Kahless, and between Picard and Worf, they just go, no, you're gonna have a figurehead emperor now.
Yeah.
Yes, Gowron,
That's
you can still be leader, but you're gonna have this guy as he's gonna be your figurehead, and it's gonna be healthy for the Empire. I mean, it's like, and it all happens in the observation lounge of the Federation flagship. It's funny. Anyway, so in the back of my mind has been floating what happens to L'Rell in the next 9 years, in the next 10 years. Between now and Organia,
Yeah.
what happens to her, who's running the Empire? Because my headcanons right now pending is that she's not she doesn't last long.
No, of course
She's
not.
not in charge by the time of, because then you get into the bit about, even though later on they say women have no power on the council, and people point to Azatbur after the assassinated, I've gone blank on his name, the assassinated chancellor in 6, and people say, well, that was his daughter. It's like when the wife of the dead governor in the South,
Yeah.
in his term for 2 years, and however long Azatbur was there, that's the exception, and most of the time, no. So if that was all a reaction away to something L'Rell did while she was there, or what? Because that's only about 20 years later.
Exactly, and it's still, nobody has addressed the fact that L'Rell's entire foundation of power is that she's holding the Klingons, the entire planet, hostage.
Yeah.
And that, like, no one has addressed that satisfactorily for me. And like, at the end of the day, too, like,
it's like if they gave
it's not like
Kim
it's not like the war
China.
ended. Well, it's not like the war ended peacefully. It's not like there weren't huge squabbles. Like, she's not governing over a council that's happy, or anybody that's really happy to see her. I guess she kind of is now, but she's never seemed
strides with her D7 unified ship design. But I mean, one more thing: it took a disguise Section 31 agent to keep her in power when she got there on Shaky.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem, which sucks because I think people, really have rallied behind that character, but her rise just seemed a little bit too fast for me. Like, she kind of she's a member of a fairly insignificant house. She's like joined this cult, essentially. She follows Vogue, and then she gains some position of prominence, but she seems fairly insignificant in the face of other Klingon society, and then boom, she's mother, which is, it's cool and it's interesting, and it's compelling to see somebody rise so quickly, because she certainly rose to the occasion. I don't think that the character is undeserving of her position, but it also doesn't inspire length for me.
Well, there's historical parallels. I'm trying to think. Not necessarily with women, but just with the weak, where did they come from person who hops in, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Comes in from the outsider and takes over. But anyway, the back of my mind, I still keep saying, how are they going to let her play out? How will what will happen in whether it's depicted in a series or not? What's going to happen in years?
That speaks to. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue. That nasty habit.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My curiosity is more towards like, well, you guys keep creating characters that people love, but then by nature of the show sort of being this anthology show and wanting to have a slightly bigger universe, there's not really a reason for L'Rell to keep coming into contact with the Discovery. And we see that in how little she's shown up this season. And people love Mary Chieffo and they love L'Rell. She's a huge draw. And then also there's the problem of Captain Pike and Spock. Like, Spock I think less so, but people fucking adore Captain Pike. And there's going to be some kind of weird backlash when he's gone, even if that just means the writers have to come up with a character that's just as endearing or interesting, and then find an actor who's just as compelling and Anson Mount to top it. I feel like Discovery it's only season 2, and it's set themselves these really huge hurdles to jump.
Yeah,
and to try and be like a modern show, a modern prestige show, at the same time, like, also be a fairly, keep the fans that you win, and not stop throwing away things that not throwing away, but writing yourself out of things that they enjoy.
Yeah, I know they've been at work on season 3 for several weeks now. I just don't know what we're waiting to see here just another couple of episodes how this arc ends. And there've been all these promises made in the panels and the press conferences about we'll reset things and
gonna change everything.
Will be answered. But it's not even so much about where this season lands. It's now what does that mean for the third season? And after after this episode, and knowing the events of Calypso, it's like, well, they're abandoning that. They're not going to. The name of the show is Discovery. They're not going to leave shit behind and then be just we're secretly going to do the third season on Enterprise. No,
everyone. I noticed. I kept noticing theories say like it's bopping around. I think I didn't write something for Screen Rant, but somebody did about how obviously like if we're going to go by the short tracks kind of telegraphing this season. Could Michael Burnham's mother be Discovery's last captain? And everybody's kind of really excited about that idea. It's really symmetrical, and it gives her like hopefully maybe some hope and purpose towards the end. And that makes sense. But then I'm like, but that means that Discovery is gone. Like that means there's no more Discovery. Everyone's so excited about it, but I'm like, well, what about the show title and the ship? Like does it just stay there in the future forever and they come back and get it? Like if she's its last captain, that's gonna handicap season 3. Is what I'm saying. Right.
Or is that the fact that it sat there for 1,000 years with the AI, getting more and more romantic?
That was lucky, wasn't it? Lucky that it went that way.
Yeah. Is that? It's like what I keep wanting to say. What are the local stations going to say about this? Oh wait, that's a moot point now. But what are they going to do? That's not going to happen. They're going to have this intact cast with something next year. That's what's the big mystery to me. It's not all these little plot points about the Red Angel and the snapback of the time, and the control in 31. And I really hope they're not going to go with it. I was dreading this, and I saw you couldn't help but go there the way they dealt with Leland and showed him being assimilated with the small. God,
yeah. Well, especially all
these Borgified. I said, no. Let's not talk about your small universe. Let's not make it small across time and space both. Let's not.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I think we also talked before we started recording about how when Pike goes to Bereth to get a time crystal, he meets Folk and Laurel's son, who is played by Kenneth Mitchell, who has also played Cole and Kolsha, former also Klingons. Right. Small universe, man.
At least it's out of that DNA.
3 of the same Klingons.
Like clever casting because it was like father and son. And now I'm like, so Cole was secretly the father? She was
exactly.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wait, what? I mean, it was kind of poignant.
Folks.
It's poignant where they set it up that he's, I'm son of none, just like my father. I mean, that had a little bit of resonance, but yeah.
I liked that quite a bit. I didn't really have a problem with with it being Laurel and Voke's son, but I'm also a Doctor Who fan, so wibbly wobbly timey wimey doesn't bug me.
I think it's one of those things that like I would have liked had we gotten it 3 years from now. If they come to that planet and like I had gotten a chance to forget about that story, not it just happened 3 months ago, and you're going to give me a very fun here's what happened last time in the Klingon storyline of Discovery flashback. I think that's beautiful, and Kenneth Mitchell, who is perennially great as a Klingons, did not disappoint this time. It was just, I don't know. I feel like we're getting the tent poles of a lot of stories, but not make it. But I feel like those stories aren't getting used to.
They're not given enough air.
Yeah, they're not getting to take advantage of the increased real estate of a television show. And which is weird because this is a television show and it's long, but I feel like there are so many things going on and so many I feel like we're missing a lot of the detail work, and I kind of just want them to take out
limits. They don't have commercials breaks. They've got the flexibility of streaming. They can ooze all over the place however they want to.
Speaking of ooze, it's almost like if we'd seen Sela, Tasha Yar's daughter, like 22 episodes after Skin of Evil.
Exactly. Like, or if we'd seen her, like it's when that happened, it was just like, holy shit! Wait, Tasha was alive. That Denise Crosby is still talking to people. This is insane. And she's a Romulan. What? And Spock is here. Like that was cool.
Yeah. I mean, you'd had the kind of you know, and talking to the writers back then and doing the Next Gen book and across the whole Berman era, as it's coming to be called now. But, you know, it was a thing where you would say, well, we want to bring back, you know, after Best of Both Worlds, it was like, well, we want to bring back the Borg because everyone loves them. But what the hell do you do with them next? So rather than race in, they waited until they thought what they had was a decent idea, and it went small. Was, you know, Iborg was.
I know.
Was that a groan of pain?
Or no, I love Iborg. Like I was like maybe 12 when I saw that movie, and I just wanted to like pick him up and give him like a kiss on that cheek, tell him it was gonna be okay. Oh, cute.
Yeah, but my point is they would sit and savor things and wait and even put things off and say, well, we're gonna do one Q show a year, we're gonna do one Loxana show a year, you know, or whatever. Even on the others, we're gonna do on DS9. We're gonna do one.
Wait, hang on. Did you share this, Larry? Who did I see this on Facebook? Where you can, if you have $3,500, my friend, you can pick up the dress Majel Barrett Roddenberry wore in Menage a Trois when she crashes Deanna Troi and Will Riker's undefined picnic. They make out. Are they together? Are they not? Have they been sleeping together this whole time? Triker's ship went wild.
That was right for third season. That was the first, you know, one of the real glimpses that, oh my God, they kissed. That was one of the times they kissed before Insurrection when she said, "I've never kissed."
I think they kissed in Haven.
Well, he didn't have a beard then, but they kissed at the loss when she was, you know, having her crisis of no telepathy. She lost her Betazoid.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Notice I said Betazoid abilities, not Betazoid powers, because this is not superheroes. These are real people. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, if you want that dress, it is so extra. It is magenta. It's got a corset and so many sequins and this like full voluminous skirt. Oh my gosh, it's perfection.
And they've laundered out all of the Udaberry stains. So
anyway, sorry. What were we talking about?
Yeah. Can I just say though that the title of this episode, Through the Valley of Shadows, it's amazing because this has been the backup title for every single episode of Discovery.
Basically, it's definitely the second title with the word shadows in it.
Well, yeah, I just thought
season though,
this could have been the name of anything. I mean, you know, any episode of this show could have been named this. So it's a real stickler. I've got to remember the Boreth Valleys, I guess. See, that's the thing about it. The serialized show. You know, like in the original series, we'd say, well, that's the Roman one, that's the Nazi one, that's the gangster one. And it's almost like with this one, it'll be the, come on, it's serialized. Hang on to one thing that will just, I mean, forget the Dominion shows of the war arcs of DS9, because there's like 5 plots going on in those, and there's no way you can really remember what's happening. And, you know, if I give you a title, I don't think anybody can remember. I could remember the last couple because they were the last couple before the finale. The Dogs of War.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the Wind and the Sails. Anyway, that's the one where Gowron's killed because that's the one where Rom gets to be Nagus. But it's like they were the ending. They were the ending bits. But these episodes, New Eden is the one this year that stands out because it was the one that felt like a standalone episode. Where
yeah, you're right. Everything is very much bleeding together.
And Magic to Make the Sane Man Go Mad last season was the capsulated one, but it had to be because it was a time loop.
Yeah, and Red Angel is the one where the Red Angel finally
appears. Yep. Yeah, but like Light and Shadows it's the one where Spock appears, not the one where he like speaks in coherent sentences. That's the following one, and it's there's just a lot of there's not a lot of distinction episode to episode.
Yeah. Which to me is going to be the thing. Like we're sitting here, everybody talks week to week. The first season, it was really annoying because it wasn't even about, people couldn't like analyze the stories. They were too busy being wrapped up in the controversy of the week, it felt like. Oh my God, the F-bomb. Oh my God, what they've done here. Oh my God, what they've done
I feel like what we're seeing now, I don't know if you can agree, I don't know if you'll feel the same way, Larry, but I feel like what we're seeing now in a lot of Twitter fandom is like people who are aggressively in love with this show and cannot hear a thing bad about it. And I think that's a direct pendulum sweep from everybody just picking it apart every single episode immediately during the first season.
Yeah, it's like people were, I heard this from some of my Portal 47 people. I didn't expect it. It's like, thanks for having our closed page just for us because I don't get attacked from, you know, the toxic fandom. But it's like that toxic pendulum has swung from people who hated on the show to people who can't entertain criticism. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Or even a difference of opinion.
right.
It's, yeah.
And
Which
some
is
of this,
just
I mean, it's been interesting to me. It's almost like everything that I wind up talking about the show, or it's almost like the times you're in the week to week to week. I was saying this last year. This year has been a complete settle down. You know, it's 10 times better than last year. And of course, I say, well, it's not their fault. They had a horrible birth. The show had 15 parents last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now it's even with getting rid of Aaron and Gretchen 5-6 shows in, it's much more settled. I think it's still evolving, but it's like people can actually talk about the shows this year, not get wrapped up in the controversies. But either way, the takeaway to me is, how are we going to look at this series and these seasons like 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? And that's what's intriguing to me. And I know it's like, well, live in the moment, Larry. Shut up and live in the moment.
Yeah.
I just keep wondering when all the streaming hoopla is gone, and these are just more, boxes on the wall, Netflix or whatever.
It'll be a show that you rewatch like Lost, and not a show that you rewatch like TNG, where you're gonna go back to you're gonna go back to yesterday's Enterprise 80 times because it's an amazing episode. Right. You're gonna rewatch it as a block, or you're not at all.
Yeah.
Right. And people do rewatch, DS9 and the Dominion arcs, or they watch more people are, I think, watching the Xindi year on Enterprise than we're doing 10 years ago, but that's desperate for watching things. But I think some of this we were talking about with the fandom and the newer, now the kind of pushback, and now it's perfect and don't say anything. And that's a pendulum swing. It's going to settle down. It will.
Yeah.
I think there's a big it's the creators and the fandom both getting used to what does serialized storytelling look like, not just in general, because people have been watching Game of Thrones. They've been watching Walking Dead for 10 years.
But we haven't seen Star Trek do that.
What is it through the Star Trek lens? How do you apply that to Star Trek?
Yeah.
And everybody is still getting used to that. And it's just gonna take a while.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to be part of a fandom now that has like so much more interaction with the cast and with the producers because they're also active on social media. That's been I almost don't like that element. I almost would prefer to like just be able to have my opinions with fandom and not have to worry that like Anson Mount is going to see the one episode where I didn't love it.
And you're going to disappoint Chris. I'm
going to disappoint Dad. That's going to be. He'd even be good about that. I feel like he'd be.
What if streaming had happened pre-social media?
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, what if we'd had this situation and we all have these thoughts, but we're all limited to our little, or we're in slow motion. We're like on message boards or something.
I gotta wonder if, like, I don't even know that we'd have geek culture in the mainstream without social media or like the backbone of the internet. I feel like it just would not have been allowed to get as loud enough to like, and as loud and to support such a big community that it would eventually support like it bleeding over into comedy and talk shows and people who like, Chris Hardwick's a bad example, but the one I can think of can straddle both mainstream culture and also be an ambassador for geek culture at the same time. It's just, I don't think that we get the credibility without that loud, a dull roar on the internet.
That's probably true. That they're all in a synergistic thing. It's like dominoes falling or
yeah.
I guess the closest analog we would see would be Battlestar Galactica, the sci-fi reboot. Social media obviously was a thing, but it was still in its. It wasn't. It was mostly millennials on it, and not everyone. It wasn't where you went to talk about things. It's where you went to talk about beers. Exactly.
Well, and that was like Battlestar was when forums, I feel like, were still really active. Like I remember going to the Television Without Pity forums, and I'm sure Reddit had 1 million.
No, Reddit didn't.
Oh, really?
Because it was 2006.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, never mind.
Well,
but basically, like, there were, like, forums where you, like, obviously forums are still a thing, but I feel like Battlestar really, like, that was where its online presence was. And also Ron Moore was doing podcasts. Nobody was doing podcasts.
Ron Moore on DS9, I remember just being blown away because he would, after the years of Rick Berman being the man in the high castle, the man in the ivory tower. And we even in our time, it was like, oh yes, we think we have a really exciting one coming up here that we're really happy about. And that would be like an in-depth, like, no, let's talk about specifics. And all the people below him would talk specifics, but you couldn't to get the official quotes. Nobody would do that because he didn't just, it was all keep it all close to the vest. And the science of, I remember thinking at the time, be careful what you wish for. Someday you may get someone who is an expert at leaking and selectively letting things out, and he'll manipulate you. And then bang, that's where the world went, right? That's where all the big producers now learn, starting with JJ, learn to do that. So now it's the other way around. But I've lost my train there. But go on. Yeah, go ahead.
I just realized we've gotten off track from talking about the actual episode.
I want to know everybody's thoughts.
Totally covered it. We're done.
I want to know everybody's thoughts on Pike's his moment on Boreth with the time crystal. I hate the term time crystal, by the way.
Yeah, I'm also really annoyed with everybody online who's like none of this stuff is real. Like there's been other time it's not technology. None of it's real. Time crystal's fine. And I'm like, yeah, there hasn't, none of this is real, but it's usually a little bit more grounded than time crystals. Like, that's prosaic. And the fact that they're just running around on the Orion black market seems really dumb to me. Like, I don't know. And apparently,
Well, there 2 or 3 things happened. Yeah, so the last couple of weeks, and I think there was a really universal collective when they first were saying time crystal. And because my mind went to, I kept expecting, Jim Henson. I can't talk. Yeah. I kept expecting Jim Henson Muppet trolls and elves.
Yeah.
I got a Dark Crystal poster and marked out dark and scrawled in time. This is what I'm thinking of. And then you have the secondary wave of well-meaning people going, no, time crystal, it's a real thing. The last few years there have been, and I go, that's fine, but this is 200 years in the future. Someone will by then be calling it, I don't know, a chronoton crystal or a temporal crystal, something.
Yeah. Or come on, guys.
Is it a time crystal? Yeah. Because every time they talk about it, I just want the wizards and the elves to come out and go, and here's my time.
Yeah,
yeah.
And here's the place on her suit for the time crystal to be inserted. And I'm just, come on, guys.
This is not She-Ra. Even She-Ra's dope, but that's not why I'm watching Star Trek. But in terms of what it did to Captain Pike, which I thought was kind of a hilarious Indiana Jones thing, is it showed him his future, and it connected it to the way we know Pike dies, for lack of a better word, which is that he gets caught in overexposure to radiation and suffers horrible burns and becomes basically paraplegic or quadriplegic. And our Christopher Pike, what?
Trapped in his own mind.
Oh,
yeah.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
And our Christopher Pike actually glimpses that future, and I really liked it, Johnny. I liked it a whole lot.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
I had oh my God, they really went there. I think I tweeted that. I said, oh, they went there like Roman numeral 2, like after the Telosians. It's like they've gone here. And because the whole thing was this whole intersection, once again, of the how are you going to depict the 60s and how are you going to, and they embraced the actual footage at the beginning of, I've forgotten what that was, Project Daedalus, whatever the Telosian visit episode. People said, well, that's very ballsy. They're embracing the 60s footage, and see, it's all the same. And this thing about, but they're not going to, the Pike wheelchair, the one bleep, that's so out of sync with the technology. They had, with the technology that we have now, that we're seeing in Discovery, much less what would happen in that century that they're setting up. And yet they found a way to Discoveryize his wheelchair. I mean, you knew the minute he was in that haunted after image, blurry thing in the background, I was like, oh my God.
And oh my God, you guys, it was so sad.
I wasn't
so sad.
Oh, I was. I wasn't like in a squee. Oh my God. It was like a, wow. It's like respect to them. They actually went there, and they did it well. I thought they did it within their little 25%. I'm just laughing at that, but they did it within this thing they've created for themselves of whatever reason. So it wasn't like a cardboard copy, which I really would have. I mean, a carbon copy, which I really loved. but it was not far off, and they still had the one big light on the front. And I thought, wow, that was pretty ballsy. And
it also felt like a horror, like it felt like he was in the middle of his own short horror film. The tone of that was so palpable,
incredibly. And he's like in shock. He did that at it was the same feeling and moment from Anson Mount as when Vina popped into his ready room. That stumbling backwards moment kind of thing, and that's the only time. It's like in the whole swath of Pike's emotion and his range and what you've seen them write for him and what he had to play. That's the only two times, because other times he's been like, I'm sure he's been scared shitless, like when they were in the pods.
Well, I think it's the only time we've seen him be. He's only done that because he's been alone.
Right.
Those are the only two times we've seen it. Like Vina comes in and then he's up alone with this experience, and I noticed that, and it was like, it's very telling that he doesn't show that part of himself, which is what makes it such a pleasure to watch, because it's so intimate.
Right. No, I mean he's a well-rounded character, and they've written scenes across the board for him. But it strikes me that those are the two times when he's just, and yeah, he is alone. Although he had Tanavik or whatever his name was tonight. I wanted to look that up and see where they got, like, what does Tanavik mean?
Yeah,
Croatian.
I tried searching it and nothing. I don't know if I have the right spelling.
Yeah, Tenavik. That's one good thing about the captions.
Yes.
Good point.
The stupid time crystals did not have it. They kept skipping over it tonight.
Yeah, it just said speaks Klingon.
One of the advanced reviewers had Topu or whatever. Potkut or something. Anyway, it is distinguished in there. But Anson and Pike, but then the minute they went there, then I'm like, now wait a minute, what are they going to do with this? And they kept it totally in the realm of this is in your future at some point. I mean, there are points tonight where things got so, you were laughing about timey-wimey. It's like, so he's seeing his future, so grabbing the crystal, it's like his deal with the devil? Or is that what happened here? And we've had a couple of other times we get off down the paths of Control and 31 and shooting, the zombification of Cameron Grant again, and having the bizarro, I'll see your Terminator, liquid metal, and come up with your magnetized nanobots coming at you like a spider, or whatever the hell that was.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all these things, it's like, what is I just felt like after a while there were some wonderful character moments, like the Pike scenes, and some set pieces, but there were a lot of just things that were just felt like an onrushing, I don't know, waterfall, tsunami at me. And people would be speaking explanations for things and stakes, but I still wasn't. It's like I'm gonna have to watch this 3 or 4 times to see exactly what the nuance was, if there was a nuance to anything. But it felt like there were some waterfalls of things happening on 2 or 3 fronts, and getting back to that thing, we're writing these scenes and we have to just get from here to here to here because we have to.
Yeah, everything feels like a foregone conclusion at this point. Like we knew we weren't gonna solve the control problem this week. Like, obviously they're going to go to the Section 31 ship, and they're either going to get a key. I kind of wish they had just been like, okay, this is just going to be a quiet episode between Burnham and Spock, but we kind of already did that last week and the week before, so it's like, okay, well, something's going to go wrong. It's probably going to be Control, if I had to guess. All these people are in space, and it's a Section 31 ship. Smells like Control. Bet this guy's Control. He's the only one alive when he happens to be from the Shenzhou. We manufacture some tragedy there. And then the whole idea was that it lured her there the entire time because she's key somehow. And Michael Burnham is, again, this chosen one. And it was like, okay, well, I kind of knew that was going to happen. And you just gave me a really sort of predictable path for them to walk to get to that conclusion. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
If I'm putting any brain power into this at all, I'm thinking, okay, if she's the chosen one, and this is all about her, you still have so what happens to her in the sweep of history looming, and then also what happens to her in the sweep of the series, because they're coming back for a 3rd year. She's got to be around. How does she come back from being, the central crux of yet another big galaxy-spanning crisis? And without being the heroic it's okay for Sisko or Picard or Kirk to be that, because they're driving it and they wind up you can laugh about that too. It's the only ship in the quadrant, or he's the guy that has to go settle the Klingon Civil War, or he's the one that's got to fight the Dominion War bare knuckle handed himself, or whatever. But at least they're kind of in that, and
yeah, at least they're leading the conflict. Like Picard is the leader of the flagship,
Right.
Sisko is the captain of the station that's on the front line of the Dominion War. It makes sense they'd have those positions, but
so how what are you gonna do third season? I mean, the first season ends up they find the Enterprise, and you feel like, okay, the war is over. Now we're gonna get into some.
Boy, I'm sorry, Enterprise. What a big Enterprise. People were talking about Spock tease this season. We only saw the Enterprise like twice, and that was what they ended the first season on.
Right. Well, it's grab whatever there is to promote with, and it's like all these episodes have things, and again, you get off on either the if not a controversy, but at least the shiny thing of the week, and then 1 week later it's like nothing. You know, that's why I'm really curious to see, once we're out of these trenches, once we get out of the hedgerow country and we got on in toward Nazi Germany, what would the real war look like? And it's like, what would the real arc of the season, and
once they settle under Michelle Paradise and we have just a consistency of leadership and a consistency of vision for the first time for this show, I'm really curious to see where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, this felt 10 times more consistent and settled than first season, obviously. Mm-hmm. Not like a trio of 3 mini seasons that kind of transition. So I don't know, the Pike Borath, and when he's leading him across the little bridge, I almost wanted to go find the tractor beam emitter or something. But when they're
I wanted them to go find the Holy Grail, because that's what that looked like.
You know, the little Jim Henson, dark crystal key goes in this. This is the pillar of past, and this is the pillar of the present.
What did you think of that, Johnny?
That aspect was it was exactly like Larry said. It was sci-fi adventure, or a fantasy adventure. We should have quested for 3 hours in a video game to go get that key.
Oh yeah, I really wanted that. Like, I remember looking at that, I'm like, my brain is so satisfied. It just fits right in there. It's glowy. Something big is gonna open. Yes, I love keys like that.
I was amazed that the whole time when they took the baby and when they took the baby to Boris to hide it, right before, I went, that's cool. They're going to reuse Borath. Okay, and the monks are there, so that all makes sense. But to pop in and in like the span of 3 sentences go, oh, you all know of Borath as the place where the monks all worship Kalis, and in 100 years they'll bring back his clone. Well, I've got news for you guys. They're not just clone keepers. They're time keepers. There's
also
this whole industry of time crystals, and
and we don't use them. Klingons don't use the time crystals to take over the universe, because this is the one area in which they show restraint. They've learned that. So, they don't use the time crystals. They just install people to peacefully guard them, and these guys have to, never even have to defend them.
And we just race around like it's the Matrix or something. We zoom up to people and we zoom away.
Well, and then okay, so somebody's got to help me discover Tenavik. So is he just an adult when he wants to be? And then there's sometimes when he's a child. Is time a flat circle for this guy? I don't
know. I just felt like the whole time it was almost like, okay, I'll see your Alexander.
This is what we call in soap operas the soap opera re-aging syndrome.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. They're aliens. Aliens can do anything. Human kids, you'd never do that with. But alien or half like with the Katarian with what's her name on Voyager.
Oh, Naomi Wildman.
Yeah, Naomi Wildman. They can grow up at incredible rates because they're half alien, and we've never fleshed out their or whatever. Or the humans.
They're just a useless baby.
I think that we've just learned that the most important tactical asset in any alien culture is going to be their monasteries. It's where the Vulcans and the Andorians hide their spies.
Right.
It's where the orb it's where the prophets hide their incredibly important rocks.
That would make sense. At least, it's the gods putting them there.
Dude, you could get into the orb of time by making an appointment.
But you couldn't actually make it to your appointment unless the orb of time wanted you to. You'd run late otherwise.
All those years away from developing Vulcans, all through Next Generation and DS9, and then they finally go back into Voyager, and all of a sudden Tuvok is talking about his temples and their gods and temples, and wait, even the Vulcans...
And they remembered to make him 200 years old. They're like, oh wait, they can do that. And Tuvok had a whole other Starfleet career and taught at the academy, taught archery. That one time they were stuck on a planet.
Boy, do they show their age well. They're like most Asian cultures, they just very slowly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we gotta talk a little bit about Jet Reno, because
yes, Counselor Reno.
Yeah,
she's so I like Tig Notaro so much. I want her to stay.
But they established in one swoop tonight that she's gay and she's a widow.
I thought it was a little like mirror to be like, I've had the exact same problem you had, and if my wife came back to me, I'd be grateful, you jerk. And maybe I don't know. Yeah, it would. You're hurting your husband.
I was so shocked that they went there with, not shocked, but I was so surprised that they took, 45 seconds of screen time and 5 lines and gave her that much backstory.
Yeah.
That
and then didn't kill her.
Well, the season isn't over yet.
Episodes. Yeah.
I think, I just did a Disco Nights podcast with Chase Masterson a couple of weeks ago, or a while ago, but it just dropped a couple of days ago. It was called Boys on the Bridge, and we talked about homosexuality in Star Trek. Starbucks. Talked about homosexuality in Star Trek, and I apologize for anybody who listened to that, because it was an awesome panel, but we did not have anybody who is LGBTQIA on that, and it occurred to me while we were recording that probably would have been super easy. But I don't book the guests. But I mentioned that it's kind of incredible to me how progressive Star Trek is. And I think it's easy to understand in context, but it's still on its head incredible to look at how progressive Star Trek is from day one and realize how little attention was paid to homosexuality until Discovery. It's and like it's all understandable in a certain kind of context, and I think it's been talked to death. But I think, Larry, you're right that it is pretty incredible that not only are there not one, not two, but 3 gay characters aboard a ship, only 2 of whom were in a relationship with each other. We had a scene between 2 of them now where she dropped like it was nothing that she's a lesbian and married and a widow. And it's a lot of like, I feel like just to have something like that tossed off in a scene that's not about anyone's sexuality, that's just about relationships, is a huge marker of progress for Star Trek.
Well, I love the way we can talk now. I mean, she didn't say, well, I'm gay too. I mean, all I had to do was say, well, I lost my wife. And if you're not paying attention, you get wrapped up in the emotion of the moment, which is the whole point. It only has to be your 2019 self that goes, wait, did she say wife? Oh, that's cool. They've made her gay too. The emotion of the moment, it was what we needed for that. And that was just a little choice they made. And,
it was definitely like a show. It was definitely like we showed, we didn't tell. Like, it was sort of a gloss. Yeah, it wasn't presentational.
Yeah. Can I throw in one little thing before we get totally away from this? So watching these things hit me. So the scene where Ash is in his room and Burnham comes to him, Michael comes to him. So he's in his room and the door rings. No, wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah. The door chimes, and he says "door," and the door opens. It was just odd to me. He didn't say. There are so many. I mean, I've laughed about this as the season's gone on. About a third of the way in, I noticed that people get in turbo lifts, and they never say the deck or where they're going, and they never hit controls, and the turbo lifts just start moving. The little thing goes by. And it's a little thing. I know the big thrust here is about people and emotion and characters and stories, and I'm not going to get hung up on little. At this point,
but it's kind of annoying.
But they'll be at planets. I mean, I'll be watching a show, and all of a sudden go like, wait, where are they? What are they doing? I don't mean so much like physically, although that's happened too. Like the last time you saw Cornwell and she played Counselor Cornwell with Culber. I was like, wait, where are we? He said, oh, they told me I could find you here. And I'm like, wait, where is here? I think
it sort of speaks to, I know we don't want to get nitpicky, but it does speak to sort of this problem with Star Trek Discovery, is just a big problem on a lot of different levels, is that the devil's in the details a lot of the time, and not with this show. And I think that they feel they have so much to get done in any given series or arc that those little, I think that there are like, they're hanging sort of important references to canon on the show like ornaments, but when it comes to stuff like that, like saying where you're going in the turbo lift, that was such a part of life on TNG and Voyager and DS9 and every other Star Trek, and then you have to have a show who's ignored that. It's like, wait, you guys have your eye on you have your eye on a lot of balls and you're missing one important one, which was just sort of the mechanics of what everybody's doing.
Yeah, it was the subtext. It wasn't like, oh, show off. Oh, look, we did a writer's guide and we have all this stuff figured out. But it was the reverse. It was like that's when they used to worry that the world didn't get science fiction and didn't accept space opera or whatever. And
that's a really good point.
It was a thing of we have to do, Gene and Dorothy and Bob, everything they could do to ground it in a reality so that if you didn't believe they really lived in that universe and in that world and that ship was real, you wouldn't believe what these actors are doing their best and the poor writers are all doing their best to make it believable human drama. They didn't want to be sci-fi drama. They wanted to be drama and be entertaining. And that was just part of building the world. It was just the added hurdle they had to do because they were science fiction. And there's been a little bit of coasting since then. But the other iterations, I know that they didn't have, there's no writer's guide or show Bible. And I know that like John Eves and Scott, I want to say Christian. That's not, anyway, I know some of the art people have this and they're all kind of trying to get everybody on the same page with things. But just something, it's not an anal fanboy and fangirl thing. It's just a grounding of the show.
I think it's I agree, but I think it's indicative of like bigger problems. I think it's indicative of problems that are like that too.
Fuzzy, wobbly things that, no, it's not going to affect, the emotional through arcs of the characters. But as far as just making it kind of grounded and making everybody down in there, even when you don't, that was part of the original premise too. Even when you didn't consciously think of something, in your gut, things felt right.
Yeah.
And I think part of the ooziness of Discovery with a lot of people still might be that they can't put a name to that. But I think there's just a little, 10% of their lower right starboard aft gut that just feels a little untethered because of some of that thing. Or like they're at a planet and the show comes up and they're somewhere and they go from there to somewhere other place. And it's like, wait, what? Where were they? Were hiding somewhere? How far has it been since? I mean, tonight, one of the things that got me about this whole season is how much time has actually expired?
Yeah, that's been a big complaint with people. Like, it's been, like, not a complaint, but just a kind of like, wait, how did Control, like, my big one was when they got to Control, like, to Section 31 headquarters and everybody had been dead for 2 weeks. But it was, I think, last episode that Control had come aboard through, it was the previous episode that Control had actually infected a Starfleet computer through Arium and that she had sent messages. But it didn't feel like, it felt like those two were back to back. So people were like, wait, has it been 2 weeks since Control got here and then like got to the Section 31 thing via Arium's messages? That's, So...
Well, tonight,
it's been
those markers when, speaking of Reno, she's sitting there and she says, I thought he moved out weeks ago and you're still here. And I went, oh, so now it's been weeks, which feels like 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, just in her context, So it was like, okay, that's all we get as far as the overall clock of time.
Also,
does that mean that Spock has been on Discovery for weeks or for days?
Right.
Yeah, and also, like, why, again, like, another little thing we never saw, like, oh, Jet Reno, are you going to stay on Discovery? Because Discovery would have more than been able to drop her off at a starbase or something at this point. But I guess she's just now folded into their crew, which is, I guess, if you think about any kind of military ship or any, like, there has to be room for you. And it's not like these ships would it's not like Discovery would be running around understaffed. So, and like, not a nitpicky thing. I'm always happy to have her show up. It's just sort of like, I feel like other shows we would have gotten like, welcome aboard. You will be like an honorary member of the crew for this reason because you're, valuable and we're doing this for a while, and then it'd be great.
Or because the admiral who's a psychologist is also on board and you spent 6 months talking to robots.
Well, there's two things. Yeah, one was tonight I was going, so it's Counselor Reno, so we're having to Counselor Cornwell. Like, we haven't seen her she's out of the loop now on decision making, whatever. But,
I feel like a lot of
the scene early on when they're all, it was kind of cool because you went, oh, look, they're using the bridge crew in an observation deck, in a briefing room type scene. And halfway through the scene, Nan is sitting over in the corner, like just popped in. Like she was a Control. She pops in and they all like look startled. Like no one knew she was standing there. And she says, "Oh, hi, I'm Lieutenant Nunn. I'm now the new chief of security." Like no one people knew that. And it was okay to introduce the idea that she's going to be around future. But that was the weirdest way to do it. Mm-hmm. You know the moment I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Did that throw you?
Yeah.
Not only that they didn't know, but she's like, "How long have you been standing over there?" I think somebody did that as a joke. Like, wait, how long have you been standing there? and it was kind of in character, in moment, but still, it's like, yeah, why did you all not know she was there? But anyway, it is a she at least got explained. I keep wanting to say Tig. Reno is just floating out there, and apparently is. If Cornwell can come join the crew, I guess everybody else. If you're in for a penny, in for a pound.
It's almost like they spend so much time concentrating on being good Star Trek as far as canon goes, and even if they're changing things, they're addressing it, and skipping the aspects of being good sci-fi, like how are these elevators working, like building the stable. Or what is the structure of the ship, the command structure of the ship, building. They feel it's almost like the world is so built for them that's why they're skipping the steps.
Yeah, and it's made it a show about. I think the broader view of that is that it still feels like it's a show about just getting to these big moments between Burnham and Spock. Ooh, and now her mom's back, and ooh, and let's get to the flash of the Enterprise, and now we've like contrived our way to a point where we can get Pike to look into his future and see the moment we all know is coming. It just feels like that's what's ultimately the most important to whomever is running this show, be it, if we're going to call it CBS or Kurtzman or the writers or whoever. It feels like whoever's in control is definitely directing us towards money shots at the expense of foundation.
Yeah. And I just want to say Bowie Kim and Erica Lippert are two of the best. They're two of the, I've interviewed both of them last year, early on. They're going to show run the Section 31 show and work on Discovery. They're not leaving Discovery to go prep. I mean, they're working on this pilot script for it now, and they're developing it. And they're working on season 3 now. They're both two of the biggest nerd fans. They have their stuff. You can follow them, especially Bowie, on social media. She doodles. She's got all her nerd.
I love her Twitter handle.
And they're good. Yeah. They're good,
EXT
right?
space.
Exterior space.
And I'm not criticizing. I'm like you now. I'm not criticizing this, but this felt a little off for one of their scripts. So I don't know if it went through other hands or if there were last minute things that the show had to do. You know what I'm saying? That things got into it, or it had to do certain things accomplished besides just be well written. I don't know. I was a little surprised. I go, oh, it's a Bowie and Erica show. This will be great. And
yeah, I kind of was, because I really liked The Sound of Thunder a lot, and it's for somebody who was not that super into Saru. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that episode. I know.
The short set it up. They did that too.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that probably wraps us up for now, guys. I think we covered everything, at least that I wanted to, and then some. Thank you so much, Larry. This has been fun. Oh, wait. One thing we wanted to ask you. In the flash forwards, did you recognize the uniform that Pike was wearing?
The one with the epaulets?
Yeah, the gray jacket.
Oh, I saw that. I didn't know if that was supposed to be like their version of a dress uniform.
Yeah. That's kind of what I thought too.
Because we saw dress uniforms on people at the ceremony last year. Not on them, but on the admirals and things. Unless everybody has only been seen in their...
But why would he be in a dress uniform in that kind of situation?
I don't know. Because, time crystals, they're funny things.
They are.
Yeah. Well, on that note, folks,
we raw right from Borath in your hands. That'll do funky things to you.
I'm never touching a time crystal. I can tell you that. Thank you, Tenevik, for making that offer very clear. I am not in Starfleet. Not my job to touch a time crystal.
You don't know where that time crystal's been.
Nope. It's been to my
future. Or will
I want
be.
To know. Yeah. Larry, where can we find you on social media?
LarryNemecek.com is the best hub. My website, all things, you can get to the documentary, and portal47.net is there. At Larry Nemecek works for Twitter, and my YouTube and my Instagram are Larry Nemecek's Trekland, and my main Facebook page is Larry Nemecek's Trekland. So that all works.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Johnny, you are at
Cycloptico.
And I am at ALX August. We will be recording our Got Thrones pregame show this weekend as well, because Game of Thrones is starting in another week. This is a lot of podcasting, but we're very excited. So we will still continue DiscoTrek throughout the rest of the season, but we will also be starting Got Thrones, which we will have a recording schedule for you guys coming up later. We're probably going to we're aiming for like Tuesdays.
Yep.
Tuesdays we'll have episodes. But yeah, expect lots of excited squeeze from that and more Star Trek. Thanks, Larry, for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. This is great.
Thanks for having me so much. This has been fun. Trek well.
Trek well, indeed. We will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, folks.